You're crowding me, dude. You're on my side.
Whoa,
See?
whoa, whoa.
Look, the lines over here.
Look, you got the whole back feet of the buffalo.
You're on my side.
If I go any further, I'm on it.
You're gonna fall out of the office.
That better?
Mm-hmm.
What's up, gents?
Hey, man.
Hey!
Hi.
What's going on?
Not much. How are y'all?
You got your hair all pretty today.
You did.
It's finally growing out a little bit. It went from a half inch to 3/4 of an inch. I'm pretty fired up.
It's a big deal.
All right.
Matthew Smith. Is it? Innovation, technology, something like that at IBAT?
Director of Innovation Initiatives.
That's
Basically, it's a mouthful for nobody knows what the hell I do, and it's awesome.
Yep. Yep.
You know, it still stuns me after 100 years. That's how old I am. Just happy birthday, Dave.
Yeah.
That there's so many bankers, and not bankers necessarily, but particularly vendors, you know, that they don't really, it's an IBAT. Who's IBAT? It's like, it's the largest data association in the world. Yeah. And they kind of miss that. Texas is kind of a big deal if you live down here.
Yeah.
You know, I got the call. So a buddy of mine was eating dinner with Julie Courtney, and he says, hey, they've got a position that they want to hire you for, and they want to talk to you about it. I'm like, wait a minute, it's IBAT. I don't even care what it is. Let's do this. I mean, it's IBAT, man. Why not?
Guys in the world, right? Well, they went with me.
Look, that was honestly what I was thinking about, man, to kind of start. So Matthew and I go way back. We've worked together in a couple of past lives, right? And this is weird. So take it with a grain of salt. I have worked with you on projects, like seriously innovative stuff, definitely bleeding edge stuff. When we were successful and came out the other side, I mean, it's like TV commercials and billboards, like the latest and greatest cool stuff.
And y'all are still friends.
Believe it or not. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, I'm not that bad, right? But if you just think about that as a backdrop, look, a lot of people in, I don't know, banking politics, right? Is that association land? It's more politics and posture than technology and innovation.
Correct.
And you could be in a lot of places doing a lot of things that are cool and exciting and shiny, but I know you're like crazy fired up to be the technology guy at IBAT, right? And I have already heard from a bunch of bankers that you've helped that are thrilled to have your support. So why?
Honestly, it's this ability to go in and set everybody up to win, right? So community bankers, they need help, and they know they need help. They've got some ideas, they've got some great ideas, but they don't know the how sometimes. They don't know who to contact. And there's a whole lot that goes on in the world because they're really damn good about being bankers, right? They're really good about helping the community. Same thing on the FinTech side. The FinTech gets it. They want to help, you know, and they don't know how to connect with the bankers and what the lingo is. And so this ability to be able to connect the two together and create this relationship where everybody's winning, how crazy awesome is that?
And we definitely get it, man.
This is back to being 100, right? I've watched more idiots with microphones than I care to tell you about. And I've watched more consultants kill more banks than I can tell you about. And I think it's, to me, man, I always just kind of feel like, gosh, this technology just isn't that difficult. Mm-hmm. But it's, when you listen to 7 people try to say a word differently, it's like, how do you actually pronounce that?
But importantly,
there was one guy that had it right.
When you've done it, it's not that difficult, right?
Yeah.
How many people that talk about it
have done anything
or do it?
That's just it. I mean, not everybody's been on the bank side. Nobody's been on the FinTech. That's what I love about our relationship, Tanner, that's worked so well for us is you've worked that FinTech side, you get it. I've done the bank side, I get it. And I really think that's where IBAT and FedFis are joining together, because IBAT gets community bank side, FedFis gets a FinTech. And what a great partnership and relationship that we've got. We're saying, hey, look, we're going to help you connect the good guys. And we're going to make sure everybody gets it, because not everybody's walk the walk, right?
I think what he's saying is if you put us together, we make a whole person.
You and me, or all 3 of us?
Yeah, probably maybe all 3.
Okay, yeah.
Oh man, if you put all 3 of us together, maybe one of the quarter person, you think?
Yes.
Right. All right. So got to give the shout out, right, for the Down and Nerdy podcast.
That's so cool.
Down and Nerdy with FinTech.
Guys, I got to tell you, when you first told me about this, I was like, oh, we'll see how that goes, right? Yeah. And it's the coolest thing ever. You guys pick the hot topics of the day that are kind of those black holes for bankers, right? It's like, what exactly is an API?
We've
right?
had a couple where me and Matthew are behind the scenes prepping, and we're like, we're kind of at our reach here, it's pretty hard topics.
So here's a story from our side. At IBAT, we have this committee called the Emerging Technology Committee, where we have 10 bankers gather, and they want to know more about fintech, more about terminology, whatever it may or may not be. And some of these bankers are extremely innovative, and some of them are just there going, I need help. What does this mean? So all of a sudden I call you up, Tanner. I'm like, hey, I need somebody who wants to learn about APIs. This committee wants to learn. And you connect us with Stacy Zuniga, right? Stacy shows up to the committee. Great conversation, lots of questions, but we're like, hey, how do we replicate this out for all the banks? And so that's where the idea said, hey, why don't we do a podcast of bankers helping bankers? And it kind of started off a little bit collugi, right? We're doing this podcast and we're doing a live Q&A. Now we're going to combine it, do it all at once. But look at this, and we're getting, the CEO from Agent IQ's on. Now we're getting the president from Mocha. I mean, wow, we're getting some really big names that's joining us.
It was cool having Agent IQ because they brought one of their banks in Texas, right? And it was like, me and you didn't have to hardly do anything, right? The two of them were just, it was awesome.
Well,
it was great.
Bankers have probably sat in on conferences. We go to this little breakout room and it's wah, 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 and a bunch of PowerPoint stuff. And it's like, and you walk out of there probably done when you work.
Take your sales handout on the way out the door.
Yeah, it's like, what do you say?
Yeah.
And what you guys do that I think is so cool. It's I always tell people, you want to learn about fintech, give Tanner 2 beers on a Friday night and light a fire, and hang around the fire. And we're going to talk fintech, man. Yep. And, technology and banking and the integration points and why this works with this and why that doesn't really work with that. And kind of just break it down to where it's not so complicated. And if people would just do things like that and just hang out, man, have a conversation.
Yeah.
What y'all did is you brought that I would call it like a campfire hangout attitude to just talk it out, man. There's no major lesson to be learned here. It's just sit in the room and hang out and listen to you guys talk about the important things that the bankers are like, I think I get that, or I've heard the words, and now I can get to talk to somebody who's not trying to sell me a damn thing. They're not trying to take anything from me. They're trying to help me.
Well, a ton of it is vocab, right? I mean, look,
Yes.
Matthew and I have been on all sides of this, right? And so many times it's kind of complicated buzzwords strung together with a buzzword, right? It's meant to make somebody sound sophisticated and complicated. And it's a really simple topic.
Right? What to catch them like is when they mix all the buzzwords together and it doesn't make a damn bit of sense.
Yep.
And you're like, what did he say?
Well, me and Matthew are pretty simple guys, so we break it down easy.
We don't like lawyer talk or government speak. We're just going to tell you like it is.
That's right. So next question.
Go ahead. Can you remember it? Can you remember it?
Probably.
Sure.
Maybe.
Okay.
Write it down.
I remember when I was first reading before I'd met you, and Tanner told me all about you, of course, but when I hadn't really formally met you and became buddies, I was reading all this bio stuff about you, and it's like, this guy literally knows just about almost everything about ATM, everything about payments, everything about mobile, but everything related to the technology side of banking.
Was that because you got fired a lot? Or
they're like, hey, I'm tired of this guy being over here. Let's put him there.
Yeah. It's like your resume just reads of somebody that wanted to learn everything.
So I'll tell you, I tell the story to everybody. I worked for a CEO at a Happy State Bank. I'm sure a lot of people know that guy. But before I went to work at Happy, I went to work for a very small bank in Amarillo, Texas, and I was working at a grocery store, and nobody gave me a chance. And so the CEO of Happy State loves the story, made me sell it forever. And so I'm talking to the lady, and her husband's the vice president of this bank, and she says, hey, go in and interview. And so I go in, interview, and wound up getting the job. And so for the first 30 days of my banking career, I'm going to get in the senior vice president of deposit operations of Herring Bank, Amarillo, Texas. I'm going to get her coffee. I'm going to get her dry cleaning. And it dawns on me, like, and I tell my wife, I was like, I think I'm this lady's assistant. And my wife says, Matthew, I know you, and I love you. I've been married to you for a while now. And she said, you always forget the details. You're assistant to the vice president. So I know those words are little, but they mean a lot. So you're actually an assistant. But what that translated was I was very fortunate and got to work every position in deposit operations. So I wound up being more than just an assistant. And so I got to work, insufficiency, returns, independent sponsor or, ISOs. Think about all this stuff. And I was exposed to a ton in that 4 years before I switched to Happy. And I was just so blessed to learn so much under some great people.
Backs off. He's a karate kid.
Yeah. And then he gets Happy, and we're working with them in our Malazai days on mobile banking, right? And I mean, the things that we put together there, that was back in the Wild West days, right? Remember the West Texas mobile banking wars?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was fun, man. Yeah. We had a good time.
I remember when Tanner calls me up, he's like, "Hey, so there's this thing called coming out, Apple Watch. I don't know if it's really going to go anywhere or not, but hey, why don't we do a watch, app?"
Like, you want to be the first in the country to launch this and see if we blow up? Yeah.
And I said yes before going and getting permission, and then I went and got permission. But oh my gosh, talk about we just did that in under 30 days. Is that correct?
Yeah. Cranked it out. Yeah, really? I think we were one of the first.
That's amazing.
We were the first. There was I think it was one national, one of the big ones, but we were the first community bank to hit it, and it was incredible. It just the market, but I mean, who knew about QA and testing? It's like just we'll test it live.
So the OS and the device came out same time, right? And so we had the beta OS that we were writing to without a device to test on.
Golly,
that was fun.
That was the Wild West.
Yep, that was cool. And then what'd you do after that, man? After you left there, good old Happy.
So I worked at Happy State for 12 years. Started off deposit operations there, and then they transitioned me over to internet banking. I did some treasury management sales. And then they come to me and said, "Hey, we've got this great idea. We want to move you to IT."
We did a mobile banking conversion. Maybe one of the first ever. I mean, that.
We did.
Remember trying to figure that out? I'm like, I don't know if it's ever been done before, right?
At my time at Happy, so I was there for 12 years, and I probably at least quadrupled conversions, acquisitions, conversions, you name it. We did everything. And so they asked me to move over to IT. So I moved over to IT and then just started growing up my career from there. So I think, Tanner, we met. I think I was pretty fresh into IT at that time, if I remember correctly.
Probably so. I was like 14, so you were like 15, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'll tell you what, y'all were first all over the place on the things that literally changed the world in banking. Digital transformation wouldn't mean a hell of a lot if you guys hadn't showed up.
I remember when Chase came out with mobile deposit, man. I mean, we had it like 2 weeks later, and it was a scramble. Everybody had to have it. And then we did card on off and card management. We were first. All right. So tell me, back to my question, I remembered. I want to hear your perspective, right? Back to, we've all been on all these different sides, but the association world, because we've been super close. I mean, generational like friends, right? With Williston and the gang, known them forever, and get to work with them. All the people at IBAT, you think, what do you see from the inside?
Ooh, this is where you lose your job. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, from my perspective, man, it's like everybody is running 100 miles an hour, helping with the toughest problems that come up, right? Mm-hmm. And not just in Texas. It blows my mind, but IBAT's out there helping other states, bankers from other states, just doing it, right? And I mean, these are tough things that come up, and they're typically, when there's a 911 in banking, it's timely, right? We don't have a heck of a lot of time to think about it. And so there's a lot to be done there.
Yeah, I haven't been here for long, so I'll tell you my short perspective, and I can also tell you my longer perspective working with them forever on the banker side.
Right.
But what's so cool to me in the 2 months I've been here, it's everybody's got this servant heart, and we're all trying to do what's right for community banking to make sure that community banking succeeds. Whether that's with your legal compliance, I mean, Karen Neely's, she's amazing on her legal stuff. You've got Skurlock, who's going down and focusing on legislation for the state. Julie Courtney with the sponsorships and all of the conferences going on. And ultimately Christopher Williston that leads it. He hires these individuals, and the whole team, I know I'm missing out a ton. And you don't even question it. You just know that all of us are doing it for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. And no matter what it is or what pops up, we're going to go at it guns a-blazing to get this knocked out. What I've learned is, as I'm talking to some of these state associations, so I've reached out to Illinois, I've talked to their team. We met with Wisconsin last week. I'm actually working with the guy in California, in Kansas, and it's everybody's got this same thing. They all want to do what's right for community banking. They all want all of us to succeed. And I didn't realize all the state associations that was out there until I started at IBAT. And in my 2 months of having these conversations, it's interesting that it's not just IBAT, it's all these other state associations, and we're all doing it together, and we all want what's right. Does that make sense?
It's great. It's really great.
It's something interesting that I've always noticed, especially since Chris come on board, that now this is not Rhode Island, folks. I mean, you go from one end of Texas to the other, and you better start before daylight, and it'll probably be dark when you get there.
Yep.
If you drive 85 miles an hour, it's a long way. And you guys just drop of the hat and go 7-hour drive to sit down with a banker for 2 hours.
So we were all driving through the middle of the night to Sweetwater a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah. You know, I mean, Christopher, I was down in Austin working on something, and he says, "Hey, I know you're going back to your home tonight. Can you be at Sweetwater in the morning?" I was like, "Sure." I didn't even question it. Right. That's just what we do. You know, there are several times, you know, I've been on some banks here lately. They're like, "Hey, can you talk?" Sure. I'll rearrange my schedule, because they're what matters. They're the ones that's working with the customers. There's the one that's making that community bank, that community succeed. So we got to help them out and be there to support them.
I mean, think about how we felt watching PPP,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm on the phone in the middle of the night with bankers and watching what they all did. I mean, talk about a community to help and serve. Shoot, these guys are salt of the earth, you know?
What's really cool for me, you know, normally being 100, I'm the smartest guy in the room on the, you know, the technology stuff. And then you guys show up and I'm like, I don't even want to talk, right? And this is so neat to watch when I get to hang out with you guys around bankers. I don't know if they fully appreciate the level of talent, especially when you put you two knuckleheads together. I mean, that's like the biggest brain I've ever seen, right? There isn't a question that I don't think you guys, whether it's ledgering on the GL or whether we're talking about how we're going to, you know, look at this aspect of unearned on a commercial, or, you know, the depth of a combination of regulatory technology capabilities and the future initiatives, things that we think up. You guys just put it together like, I mean, it's like putting bread on butter, you know, butter on bread. It's nothing to it.
We've screwed it all up before, right? I mean, go write an integration to OFAC or FinCEN, or, you know, check says, oh my goodness, right? There's a lot of traps there. And for somebody that hadn't done it before, it seems like a bear, because it is. And once you've done it, it's like, look, man, this is real easy. Just watch out for these 3 potholes.
What is like let's call it the technology black hole that you go, gosh, this seems to be like a common denominator amongst bankers. They don't really get this one piece of that. What is it?
You know, it's integration. Everything that's out there, it's bolt on, right? It's all bolt on. And I think now banks are starting to understand it, so that some of our big boys, you know, that went out the quarters, they went out and just purchased everything, and they never went in and integrated everything. And so it just causes these massive manual processes on the back end. And you want to talk about some duct tape and baling wire and bubble gum holding everything together. That's because there's that lack of integration. And I think what we're learning is that's starting to change. It feels like, you know, we're starting to have more conversation about marketplace. We're starting to have more conversation about APIs. Banks are now getting it. And I think that, I hope that's going to change. But for right now, it's just this major black hole.
Well, and I think to his point,
That's good.
You've got, what do we show? 84% of the banks that buy virtually everything from the core. From their perspective, their relationship manager at the core, that is their technology expertise and relationship, right? And when you've outsourced everything over there, you know, or within reason, you haven't had a lot of call for a lot of years to have just a ton of internal expertise, resources, et cetera, until you reach a point where you feel like it's not getting done, or, you know, you've been doing enough conferences and webinars and heard, and you start exploring and you realize you're kind of gatekept a little bit, right?
Well, if you get one-stop shop with one vendor, you're going to lose a little bit on innovation, but you also got really cool integration.
Yeah.
Hey, have you kind of picked up on this inside of bankers, helping bankers, how, you know, we built it just, if you've got a half keen eye, you see all the integrations there, you see what works, you see the, you know, the market distribution on a particular vendor and things like that. Have you kind of picked up on how that's put together? It's in there.
I've started to play with that. You know, I got the pleasure of watching Sean showing Wisconsin a really good demo of that. And I was walking it through, not only the state association, you know, at Wisconsin, I was also going, oh, this is so cool, right? So I think that's our next thing we need to really start promoting is, hey, it's all in there, right? I heard Wisconsin say this. They showed up and said, I thought Bankers Helping Bankers was only FinTech. And I thought it was only, I'm going to learn a little bit about technology. But when I got in there, there's so much more. You've got the integration strategist, you've got your marketplace, you've got your forums. There's a lot in that platform that I think bankers have not quite got their arms wrapped around it, including myself until about last week. And and what we're providing in free to these community bankers, it's astounding.
Well, I've been kind of telling everybody, it's funny. He'll come to me and he's like, if you were showing this and talking to a banker, what would you tell him? Like, the first thing I would tell him is, I'm the first guy showing up, not trying to tell you, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you the thing and let you make your own opinions with math, right? And if you got any questions, let me know. But it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But bankers have never had the data before.
They
right?
haven't.
How many customers does such and such vendor have? And they're like 7 or 700, right?
Well, we were, okay,
No
this is
way
a
to
great
know,
story, guys.
other
You
than
guys are
a
gonna love this.
marketing
All right,
thing.
so this weekend, me and Tanner are hanging out and he starts showing me these things, and I don't want to name names and go crazy here, but it's so-and-so is named top 250 innovation. So-and-so wins
The research report,
the cool
Yeah.
company of the year award, innovative company of the year award, short list of fantastic vendor award list. And it's every brand name you've ever heard of that's doing these awards and all this stuff. And we're sitting there, of course, we knew right away they got like 3 customers, and it was like, this is bought and paid for bullshit.
yes.
And when you actually go in and look at things, there are, institutions that you see massive crashes and burns on some of these things that happen.
Could have been avoided.
If you just looked at it and it says, there's 3 categories of their client distribution, and it says 33, 33, 33. How many clients do you think they have, right? There's 3. So if you're looking at this and you see the client distribution and you're like, there isn't a guy in here over like $1,
Right.
certainly not over 50 billion or any of that kind of stuff. These are the things that should like jump off the page if you're in that situation, that this isn't the one for me.
But it's never been available. And here's what's been interesting for me, right? A number of banks that are really engaged and, always have questions, right? And like, sorry, man, another question. I'm like, I love it. This is fun. They're digging and doing more and more stuff. And I think they're looking outward and it's like, this can't be real, because they're on LinkedIn, they're going to the webinars, they're seeing the research reports, and they're like,
yeah,
right, everybody's saying all this stuff. Well, here's what's interesting that's changing right now, finally. Those folks have always had air cover in the fact that they can't be proven wrong.
That's exactly right.
It's
nobody
just
showed them the
opinion,
data, right?
Because nobody has the data.
Good call.
That's exactly
When
right.
you show the data, it is exposing some folks.
Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing. At Happy State Bank and First United Bank, we actually had a business analyst team to go in and perform research. And I led both these teams. That's why I'm so I know. And so you have a short list of people that you can call. Then you get this short list of information that you hope is correct.
Right.
And then you start digging in, and then maybe you reach out to a consultant and hopefully the consultant knows, and maybe sometimes they don't. But all of a sudden now, as a banker, I'm looking at this and I'm like, holy smokes, what I had a full-blown business analyst team, at both locations to go in and do this research. And sometimes I just didn't know. It's all there now. And it's all facts, right? And I don't have to hope that maybe the consultants tell me the truth, or maybe the relationship manager I'm reaching out to, or maybe the sales guy that I'm reaching out to or lady is correct. It's all there. And I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours looking at this. It's all there within a few clicks.
When's the last time a sales guy said, we're not the product for you? Or a consultant said, here's my
Never.
phone. A consultant said, I don't know.
Right.
Never happens.
But the thing that just grabbed me from the get-go, I mean, Matthew, for us, this is pretty easy and simple, right? We take all data, we benchmark some parts and pieces, structured a little different, and it's the benchmarks a bank needs. I have felt for the longest time that the biggest problem, the animosity between all these different groups in banking, you mentioned it earlier and it was perfect. It's a lack of understanding, right? And common ground. And then it's also, they're trying to buy and sell from each other. One's trying to implement and the other one's trying to consume, and I mean, it's just, there's so much friction in all of it just by nature. And so I've always looked at this and thought, if we could just have a level playing field of truth so that we all have a nice, honest place and it could be a playground. We got to start somewhere with a foundation of truth where we all know we're on solid footing.
Dave, you said something a while ago. I think it's so important that probably shows where we're at in our careers as well. We're not scared. All this data is solid. So I want to switch gears off that. But there's a lot of times consultants or a sales guy will never say, I don't know. There's a lot of times if I don't know, I'll call Tanner or Tanner will call me or whomever. And there's times that none of us know. But by God, we'll run that answer down until the end of the earth until we find it. Right.
You always figure out. Yeah. You bet.
Oh, my dog agrees. There you go.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's one of the qualifying questions. If I was to hire a consultant, just ask him something I know the answer is impossible. And if he says, I don't know, you're hired.
No, but I think that's what makes us so unique in our relationship is there's a whole lot we do know, but when we don't, we're not scared to be honest with each other. We'll look you straight in the face, say, man, I don't know, but give me a little bit. And by God, I'll find that answer out for you.
We're all getting better too.
We've got an informal saying, and this is probably not something we want to share with the planet. So cut this out, right? But we call them guinea pig banks. And there's cutting edge, cool stuff in technology that, hey man, this ought to work. You should work, everything lines up, and it's a really cool product.
Bleeding edge.
Yeah, y'all call it bleeding edge. We call them guinea pigs. And the thing that burns me about it is, I'm not going to use nice words. I'm going to say lies. So when you lie to a banker and
we can integrate with anything.
You bet. Right. That's the warning rule, danger Will Robinson, right? So things like that, tell them the truth. But here's the other part of that. I've found many times that there's bankers out there that, okay, look, kid, you got some cool stuff. It looks like a cool thing. I'll run it internal through our stuff. We don't have to run it through our client base. We can do friends and family internally. We can validate your model. Mm-hmm. And here's what my ask is. I want your product. If I like it and it works,
give it to me for free.
Give it to me free. And the companies will be like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you what, you're not going to get around in this world in banking if you don't have a couple of reference banks. And if that's what it takes, look at that like your startup cost.
But likewise, bankers, right? It's not that hard to let somebody come and hook up, especially a lot of this basic point solution stuff, the easy things. Let them come in there, do a test with a few employees. That way they can say that they've got an integration, it's live, and they've got users using it. That is such a difference from where they were yesterday with, we think we're ready, but we need a bank. And every bank they talk to says, I need 3 references on my core.
Had somebody not done this, we wouldn't have mobile banking today.
Yeah, little give and take.
Online banking today. Right? There's a lot of great products out there that somebody had to be that guinea pig.
Well, let me go back to this because this is a very important thing that bankers need to understand. In my opinion, it is how do you mitigate your risk? And Dave, you already nailed it on the head. Is bankers are very risk adverse. We love a lot of information. We want to know everything before we jump in. Then once we make a decision, we're going in. But there's ways to mitigate that risk whenever you're with a new vendor. And it is, how do you find the small use cases? So your friends and family was a phenomenal example, right? So whenever you're saying, hey, I'm nervous about rolling this out to my whole population, that's okay. Let's roll it out to 5 or 10 users. Then let's roll it out to all of our friends and family. Then we can roll it out to all of our customers. And if you break it up into those bite-sized chunks and you mitigate your risk, you mitigate your impact, there's ways that you can do this and then everybody's winning. And I think a lot of banks automatically go to the end and they're like, I don't want to turn this on for everybody. I don't either. I want to test it out several times before I do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. A good technologist like yourself, Tanner, and a lot of good companies out there. I mean, a lot of good companies out there. Yeah. The better technologists, they're not asking you to jump off a ledge. And they're damn sure not lying to you about the fact that, in the old days, they call them a beta, which is the same thing as what we call a guinea pig bank. But I think it's important that certain bankers realize that, hey man, it's okay. I can be that guy for you. And because I really like what this thing, it's kind of a crypto-ish thing, or maybe it's a, laser beam or whatever it might be that they've come up with next, right? Next thing you know, they'll have kids on the phone.
You bet.
The neat things that come from these new product developments are going to be things you want to have in your bank. And when you told the story a minute ago, which I got to go back to that, Shal, when you were talking about the little, that's a nerd thing for me where I'm like, what a weirdo. But at the same time, can you imagine, banker, check this out. You're the first guy in the United States to be able to turn on something. I bet Apple is sending you flowers. There's so many cool things that come from that. You are the guy. You're the guy in every article. You're the guy in everything. And what did you do? Did you risk a whole lot here?
Well,
And that's what Matthew's
and
telling
who
you.
are you?
You didn't have to risk the world to
hold
do
on.
this.
And who are you? And Matthew,
Yeah.
shit, you're Matthew, right? Or me. They look like all the rest of us. I think there's a misconception. I talked to a lot of bankers and like, man, now there's all these cool, innovative bankers out there and they know stuff and I don't know stuff.
Well,
It's
they'd be
like,
taller.
they look just like you, man. You know?
Yeah. You know,
everybody's the same.
So, some of the other cool stuff that you're missing is if you get early on some of these things as banks, sometimes we get to say how things are done versus them telling us how it's going to be done.
Right.
And as bankers, you get a lot of these fintech companies come in, especially when they're early on, and they're asking you to beta test this and asking you to be one of those top 3. You have a seat at that table to be able to say, you know what? I really wish your software did X, Y, or Z. And sometimes they'll come back and go, I can't do X, Y, and Z, but perhaps I can do X and Y, or I can do X and Z. That's a cool seat on the bus that we don't have very often.
He did this to you.
He did it for years. Yeah, he's got it down to an
That's
art
what he
form.
used to do to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One more email.
You got
One
it.
more thing.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
But it goes back to the environment when we started this conversation. Everybody's winning.
Yep.
The fintech's winning because they get 2 or 3 banks that's going to beta it. The beta bank gets to win because maybe they get that one little thing that they've been wanting forever that's almost there. Everybody's winning, and what a cool environment it is.
And if that's nothing other than the billboard in town with an
It
apple
could be.
pop on it, you know how bad it was to be that other bank in town? Ooh.
Those guys.
Oh, yeah.
To me again,
Shit.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes that X is, hey, we'll pay for a billboard in your town, and we'll pay for that. Okay, well, man, I get to have bragging rights in my town. Let's do this.
I'll leave you with this, Matthew. I remember one time sitting with you guys there shortly after this, and we talked about, okay, what's next? And we all kind of had that, right? Like we
knew that we'd have thought of it.
Big
by now,
shoes
right?
to fill now, right? What's our next follow-up, you know? And we sat and we talked about it a little bit. And I asked everybody in the room the question, I'm like, who's the best digital banking app, right? At the best bank in town? And you're like, us. I'm like, because you guys think that? Like, no, everybody says that. I'm like, we've won, right?
Yeah.
We need to stay the course for sure, but don't lose sight of that. And there's something with that sentiment, right? Especially in communities, whether they're geographic or online communities, when that community believes they're in the best place with the cool, shiny stuff, you don't always have to be bleeding edge, right?
That's exactly right.
Cool.
Well, you know this, guys. So as we're winding down, I went to Canton Trade Days, and I decided I need something to keep the sun off my hair, off my face. And I found this gigantic hat that I'm going to be wearing from now on.
That's awesome.
Oh man, you can
That's
put
awesome.
lures all
Dude,
around
okay,
that thing. And
so-
Dude, I'm telling you, my neck was not red for the first time in my life.
I brought this to show you.
what is this?
Crawfish boil this weekend.
You coming?
If I had your hat, man,
You can sit out there all day long and never get red. It's great.
Yep. 90 pounds of crawfish to cook.
Well, y'all enjoy, and I'll catch y'all on the other side.
All right, buddy. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for riding with the
Bye,
cowboy.
y'all.